revealed Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort shared information with an associate who the FBI says has direct ties to Russian intelligence. Let's ask our experts about the impact of today's revelations. Susan Hennessy, what does it tell us, this new revelation, inadvertently by Manafort's lawyers included in this court document? What does it tell us about the state of the Mueller investigation?
I think once again it shows us that Mueller knows a whole lot that the rest of us don't. It's sort of substantively, it shows that there is this ongoing communication, this ongoing contact. We aren't just seeing Trump campaign officials receiving information as has been alleged in the past. That's bad enough. We're actually seeing them providing information in this case. And so I think the big question is, why? Why was Paul Manafort providing this internal polling information? Did he intend for some action to be taken based on it? And how was it seen as beneficial to the Trump campaign? Now, these documents don't answer those questions, but they continue to raise very, very big questions.
What about this Ukrainian peace plan that Manafort supposedly discussed with this Russian operative?
Yeah, so this is a peace plan that is reportedly favorable to Russian interests. Reportedly, Michael Cohen hand-delivered a version of the Ukraine peace plan to then National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. I think the question here is, there's always been a little bit of a question with regards to Trump's positions, whether or not his impulse and sort of natural inclination leads him to adopt pro-Russia positions, or whether or not he's adopting those positions in coordination or at the direction of Russians. And so I do think that this gets us a little bit closer towards wondering whether or not, there actually is some coordination, behind the scenes.
Bianna, if in fact Paul Manafort, the campaign chairman, during the campaign gave sensitive internal Trump campaign polling information to this Russian, tell our viewers why this potentially could have been significant in the Russian effort with trolls or whatever to try to help Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton.
Well, Wolf, one of the ways that it could help is that it gives you a closer sense as to how Russians were so in tune with the temperature, the political temperature in the United States. I mean, the big question for the president, and I'm sure we would hear from him if we hear a response at all, is that, he barely knew Paul Manafort, that he acted solo on this exchange, and that the president went out on his own and campaigned on his own in places like Michigan, in places like Wisconsin, places where he says his rival Hillary Clinton didn't go. So you can already see a line of defense for the president saying, I had nothing to do with this. This is Paul Manafort, and maybe he was acting rogue. That he had his own financial woes and financial obligations to some oligarchs. So maybe this is one of the reasons. But another question is, why did he come work for the Trump campaign to begin with and for no money at all, no income at all?
Those are good questions. Dana, does raise questions about what Donald Trump knew during the campaign about any contacts with Russians and what he knew after he was elected president.
Oh, absolutely. Look, it's no small thing, just to underscore what you've been talking about, for a campaign chairman, for a candidate, for a major party to meet with a Russian intelligence officer, clearly somebody who Paul Manafort, knowing the business dealings that he had, understood was just that. In the first place, never mind if he didn't share anything more than a turkey sandwich. But the fact that he shared internal polling data, it begs the important question of why. Why was he just trying to kind of, show that he's the man, and he's got obviously, because he's campaign chairman, access to information that he knows that would be of interest to Russians? Or was it something much, much more nefarious? That is a fundamental question. And look, whether or not President Trump knew about it or not, he was the campaign chairman at the time. Again, that is no small thing.
And polling, internal polling matters if you're trying to influence voters in sensitive battleground states like Michigan or Wisconsin,
exactly,
or Pennsylvania.
Right. Let's just kind of game this out. If that was the reason, if he says, look, this is our internal polling data, if the hope was that the Russians could help the Trump campaign, by having that data, they could see where the Hillary Clinton campaign was doing well, where the Trump campaign needed a little bit more help, and could potentially guide the bots and all the other things that we now know about that was going on, the monkey business going on at the behest of Russian intelligence. during the 2016 campaign. Again, I want to underscore that is a big if, but it is certainly, there's no question of possibility that Robert Mueller is looking into, because that's the core of his mission, potential collusion with the Trump campaign and Russia.
And you see how big the tentacles are of this Russian operation, though. I mean, you have the troll farm, right? You have people like Kilimnik. You have people associated with various intelligence agencies within Russia, which fits the Russian intelligence model of sort of try everything you can, have a lot of, people maybe that aren't necessarily working together or don't have a direct tie, but are looking at every which way they can open the door into the U.S. political system and obviously into one specific campaign.
And it's interesting, Sabrina, this information was released supposedly inadvertently by Paul Manafort's lawyers. It had been redacted, made sensitive information by Mueller and his team. They didn't want this information out.
Well, they didn't want this information to be public, and that likely has to do with the fact that this is an ongoing investigation. There are several other witnesses who Mueller's team are in the process of interviewing, and they likely didn't want to tip their hand in terms of what information they already had access to. Now, it's quite clear that they were, of course, well aware of Paul Manafort's meeting with Kilimnik during the course of the campaign, the fact that he shared this internal campaign polling with him at the time. And obviously, it's unclear if other members of the campaign were aware of Manafort's interactions with Kilimnik. And that's something that special prosecutors were, the special counsel and his prosecutors were obviously interested in.
The other thing is, as you're talking, doesn't it strike you as, okay, obviously hindsight is 20/20, as exceedingly dumb for a campaign chairman to go and have a meeting with a Russian operative of that level or any level during a campaign? Because obviously both governments know, not just the Russians, but the American government knows what is happening with people, with key people like that.
And not only have a meeting, but in the course of that meeting, during the campaign, provide sensitive internal polling information about what the Trump campaign is learning.
And remember, this came after that Trump Tower meeting with Natalia Veselnitskaya, which Paul Manafort was in attendance of as well. So if you say, that was a random one-off that we had no idea what the circumstances were based upon arranging this interview, then you have that meeting followed by his own relationship with Kilimnik, a bit too much of, one issue being Russia connected to the campaign chairman, saying how can he say at this point that it was just an innocent mistake, I didn't know.
That's a good point. Susan, let's talk a little bit about another revelation included today, an intriguing detail in today's filing. Manafort's attorneys disputing Mueller's claim about improper contacts between Mueller and the Trump administration after the president took office. Here's a line.
All right. Hello, YouTube viewers. This is Blake Fannin. Listen, another reason I record the news and show it to you here on YouTube. On YouTube is that the Bible says after the rapture there will be a 7-year tribulation, and during that time there will be a one world government. That is another one of the reasons I show you the news on here every day that I possibly can, because Russia and the Russia collusion investigation could be emphasis on the word could. It may be emphasis on the word may be a part of that one world government prophesied in Revelation coming to pass. So please, as you watch the news every day, either here or on the news network itself, keep that in mind. Now let's listen back in. Please like, share, and subscribe.
So certain that Manafort was lying about the nature of his communications with the Trump administration as this investigation continued to unfold.
Because as you know, there's a lot of speculation out there that Manafort was already maybe seeking some sort of presidential pardon.
Yeah, so this has been one of the questions, whether or not there was any kind of communication with Manafort's lawyers, questions about this joint defense agreement, and then whether or not if the president did something like dangled pardons or offered them in exchange for Manafort not cooperating, whether or not that could amount to itself obstruction of justice. So, whether or not potentially sort of the legal questions here are just piling on top of
What did we learn, Bianna, about Russian methods, Russian operational methods in dealing with the presidential campaign from these late disclosures?
That clearly they weren't so structured, right? There wasn't one direct model that the Russians seemed to have approached. They tried multiple angles and channels to get into the U.S. political system and the election system as well. Clearly, we know now, and as we were discussing throughout the campaign leading up to the election, that for whatever reason, the president seemed to be more favorable, or then the candidate, Donald Trump, seemed to be more favorable towards Russia and some of the things that he had said and some of even the policies that they had outlined, which then you saw the Russians say, okay, this is going to be our candidate, this is going to be our guy, we're going to help him. The big question is, was there collusion? Did the president know about this? And there's still so many unanswered questions. The first one and the top one I have is what took place during that meeting in Helsinki between the two of them?
Well, that's a good question. And someday we'll probably know. Everybody stick around. There's more we're following on the breaking news. Also, North Korea's brutal dictator turns up in China. What is